Hello, everybody. It is April 10th, 2022, and this is the Flock Squawk podcast where we break everything down concerning the Baltimore Ravens. What are we, a month into the offseason now, Chad? Just about?
2 months, right?
2 months, yeah.
Oh, you mean a month into the new year?
The new year, yeah. We're a month in.
Yeah, we're almost a month into, since free agency started. A lot has happened in the last 4 weeks for sure.
Yeah, well, even in the last week, I mean, I had an entire script written out of what I was going to talk about. And then towards the end of the week, I had to add on a bunch of things. And I was like, oh, sweet, this podcast is going to last a while. I am half of the Flock Squawk podcast, Ben Super. The other half is the man sitting to my right, Chad Cummings. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, man. Another beautiful spring day here in Maryland. The trees are blossoming. The ospreys are back in town from their migratory season. It's a beauty, I love this time of year.
Agreed. And in 3 weeks, it's going to be like balls hot.
Yeah. Our spring gets skipped here in Maryland. I know you know that. 2 or 3 weeks of nice 70-degree weather, and then it gets high 80s.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. We can't complain too much. All right, let's get into the news, man. There's so much going on. The first thing that I want to bring up, it's not really Ravens related, but we definitely need to talk about it. Yesterday, it was announced that Dwayne Haskins, who was the second or third string quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know, they didn't really shake out their roster yet, but he very tragically passed away on Saturday. He was hit by a dump truck on the side of a highway in Florida while the Steelers were down there doing off-season stuff. And I just wanted to send my condolences out to the Haskins family. This was a guy, he was drafted 15th in the 2019 NFL draft. And it's tragic, man. 24 years old, walking on the side of the highway, gets hit by a car, and that's it. Like his story comes to an end. We are a Ravens podcast. We are AFC North, and we are Ravens till we die. And we typically despise players from the Bengals, Browns, and Steelers. But this is such a tragedy. This is a real bummer. I remember seeing the news and being like, wait, what? Like, what? Of all the people I would have expected that to happen to, he was probably the last guy. And I just think it's a real tragedy. And my thoughts and prayers are with his family, the Steelers organization as well, and anyone who really knew him. I just think that's awful. And I thought we should address it before we start the podcast. So rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins, right? Do you have anything to add to that? I mean, it's just what a crazy story.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, any loss of life is tragic, but someone so young, it really hits harder, especially when we're in our early 30s now, and to think back to when I was 24, 25, and to think of losing my life or a friend's life at that age, it's just like, it's horrible, man, to think about that. Yeah, so just prayers to his family, his wife, his friends, and yep. Every day is a blessing, Don't dwell on the little things in life, Kiss your loved ones, tell them you love them, give them a call if you haven't talked to them in a while. Try to live in the moment as much as possible because you never know when it's your last day. For sure.
Absolutely, yeah, and I echo that sentiment. It's just so sad. I thought of when I was 24, I was getting out of the Navy. I was going to college, like I had the world at my feet. Pretty much at that age. Everybody does, really. Just really sad. And we just wanted to, here at the Flock Squawk podcast, we wanted to send our condolences. We hope that his wife, who has been left behind, we wish her thoughts and prayers as well. It's just really sort of sad. And it doesn't matter what team you're on, really.
We're all on the same human race team, brother.
Good luck to the Steelers organization going through that. I'm sure the people in their locker room are a mess. And then be careful what you post out there too. A lot of players were giving backlash to Adam Schefter, he's an ESPN insider, I believe.
Yep.
And he put out a tweet that was going over like how he was having troubles in his career and this and that. And it's like, dude, that's completely irrelevant. And a lot of these players spoke out. Lamar Jackson posted a tweet about it. Rashad Bateman posted a tweet saying that they were upset about some of the language that Adam Schefter used in the tweet. It's also a reminder to people like us who are putting out information to just make sure you put it out in a way that's responsible, in a way that does justice to the person you're talking about. So that was sort of like a side story, but it's not too relevant. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's break into some Ravens news. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with stuff that happened earlier in the week. This is going to be a wild podcast because so much news came out for the Ravens. But early in the week, Lamar Jackson was putting out a tweet trying to recruit DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks to the Baltimore Ravens. He is on the final year of his rookie deal. And then next year, obviously, he'll be a free agent. So he'll be able to negotiate a different contract. I guess it's interesting in the sense that all the people who don't like Lamar or like they doubt whether he wants to stay in Baltimore or not because he hasn't signed a contract. Why recruit somebody to a place that you are not going to be at? Right? I mean, that's just basic logic right there. And it sort of tracks with the stories that we've heard coming out for those contract negotiations for Lamar. If you want somebody, why are you recruiting them to a place that they're not going to be? He's averaged 1,056 yards every year for the years he's played. He's only played for, I think, 3. He's got 29 touchdowns. They go up every single year. The first year he had 7. Second year he had 10. And the third year, he had 12 touchdown catches, and he was targeted less last year because the Seahawks were having offensive line problems, and Russell Wilson was getting his ass planted in the dirt, which is why he left for Denver. A big reason, I'm sure. Well, I mean, this is all conjecture. Like, we don't know if this is even we don't know if the Ravens are going to be interested in doing this. We don't know if the Seahawks are going to be interested in doing this, but man, the potential. And you wouldn't have to feed him much, Chad. Apparently, he runs off of 3 bags of candy and a cup of coffee. So if you got a vending machine around, DK Metcalf would be happy. What do you think of this stuff? I'm sure it's not. I don't know if this is going to be a reality or not, but it's interesting to think about. It's a good thought exercise.
Yeah, I mean, players are known to be recruiting other players all the time on Twitter. So you shouldn't read too much, not you, Ben, but in general, shouldn't read too much into Lamar tweeting out. I mean, obviously, he would love to have a young, talented, big-ass receiver like DK Metcalf. I mean, compared to the receivers we have, I think the tallest guy is Bateman, and we've only had him for a year at 6 foot, 6'1". You know, you got like 3 other guys that are under 5'11". You got, Duvernay, Marquise Brown, James Prochet. I think we're getting rid of Miles Boykin, who's our tallest guy, but he hasn't panned out. So, imagine this offense with a big receiver like that. Like, that is something we dream about as Ravens fans, having a talented big receiver like that. Not saying, I mean, I know you and Brad have your issues with Marquise. He's still a talented Marquise Brown. You. Yeah.
No way. Me? No.
But he's still a talented guy, so I'm not trying to dog him and saying I want DK Metcalf over him, but having him with DK Metcalf, imagine our offense. I mean, he's a big dude. He's a good run blocker too. He's kind of like, he's had some of those like diva moments. I don't like saying that, but I don't know how else to explain it. Where he's like, I remember there was a couple games last year where he was like moping and stuff like that about certain things. And I think it was mainly when Russell was out those 4 or 5 games, he had Geno Smith throwing to him and stuff. So that's a little bit of a red flag, but other than that, he's a hell of a receiver, and he's going to be one of those next guys that, with the money that we saw Adams and Hill get this offseason, him and A.J. Brown are going to be blowing it up next year when it comes to the salary sizes. So that's the other thing is, like, if we do trade for him, if that's even what our front office is entertaining, I'm pretty sure he would want a long-term extension immediately. It's a nice dream to think about. I actually think it's going to happen? I don't know. But that would be a big splash trade, to get
that. Yeah, that would be the biggest. It would immediately. I would stop talking about the wide receiver position. And if I'm him, I think contract negotiations would be pretty easy, right? You just walk into the general manager's office with your shirt off and you show the 10-pack and you're like, listen, man, these,
yeah.
Where's the pen? Do you have an extra large?
He's almost an Olympic speed racer. Like he can hold his own in a nice 1,000 yard or 1,000 meter dash.
Oh yeah, 100%, absolutely. And he's something that we have been missing on this team for a long time, right? A big-bodied guy, a guy who can create space himself.
Since Antoine, we haven't had somebody that could win the one-on-ones. In my opinion, yeah. I mean, outside of the tight end position, which we always seem to have a guy like that, but yeah, the wide receiver position, we're always lacking that guy.
And look, like I said, I don't know how much stock you can put into that, but it's twofold, right? Like I said before, if you think that Lamar is trying to leave, you don't recruit a guy to a place that you're not going to be at, right? So I don't know. That was just something that came out earlier in the week, and I was kind of excited about it. I mean, he's ridiculous, man. He is such a good player, and it would be something that I think would elevate our team in a way where I would never have questions about wide receiver. As long as he was on the roster, I'd be like, yeah, we got that guy. I'm good with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would catapult us to the top of the conference if we ended up getting DK Metcalf.
I agree completely. I mean, it would certainly, the AFC North, I think people would be like, oh shit, like, we might have to address our secondary. You know what I mean? Like, I think, because this has been an interesting offseason, right? I think the Bengals have gotten better. They've addressed a lot of offensive line issues. That was their big issue, and it seems like they've addressed a lot of that stuff. The Browns, obviously, maybe not in the short term, given Deshaun Watson's suspension, but in the long term, they're going to be better. And the Ravens, I think, have gotten better. I just don't know, if there was a DK Metcalf signing, I think you could actually have a conversation. ESPN could have a conversation about the AFC North and say, okay, like who made the most progress? And it would be a 3-horse race, I think. Yeah. And I'm not the Steelers with Mitch Trubisky. I don't know. Maybe he is good. I mean, they were talking pretty highly of him coming out of Buffalo, backing up Josh Allen last year. So I don't know. It's going to be a totally different AFC North than the one that we had even last year. And I love that. I think it just got better. I want to talk about the Bobby Wagner deal too with the Rams. So he signed with LA pretty shortly after our podcast was done. Chad, everything that you said ended up being the reasons why he went to LA, right? He's from the area. He's playing for a team that just won the Super Bowl last year. All of those things went into his decision. And it was interesting because he negotiated his own contract, which is something that our quarterback is currently trying to do. There's some similarities there. The people who accuse the Ravens of being cheap, this is the one time where we actually outbid the team that Bobby Wagner ended up signing with. We were offering, I think it was roughly $18 million a year. The contract ended up averaging out to. And with the Rams, he's going to do probably $10 million a year, I believe, are what the numbers are reporting. A 5-year, $50 million deal. What do you make of this? It's not really an indictment on Baltimore, I don't think, but it definitely illustrates how players are now taking it upon themselves to negotiate their own contracts. The one difference that I see, the reason it's such a big deal for Lamar is because he's a quarterback. And quarterbacks typically, because of all the incentives in their contracts, they typically have agents negotiate those things so they can get the best price. But when you heard that the Ravens actually outbid the Rams and he went to the Rams anyway, what did you think of that? Did you make anything of it? Or was it, I mean, it seemed like honestly, man, you hit the nail on the head. Everything that you said last week, it seemed to be a factor in why he went to the Rams. But what did you think about when you heard that news?
Yeah, no, yeah, I wasn't surprised. But the one variable that I didn't know is that he was actually from LA. He grew up in LA. So if I would have known that before I talked last week, before we talked last week, then I probably would have been like, yeah, the Ravens have no shot. But yeah, I mean, I heard an interview with I forget who it was with. What's his name? Pat McAfee, I believe it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Yep.
And yeah, he basically was like, I mean, Pat asked him like, why did you pick the Rams over the Ravens? And he was like, nothing against the Ravens. He's like, I just wanted to be closer to home and closer to family, and I didn't want to have to. I've been living on the East Coast the West Coast my whole life. I played in Seattle. I didn't want to go to the East Coast. It was unfamiliar to me. I get to stay home, play football, be close to my family, and I won't have to deal with the East Coast. And that's basically what he was saying. And they asked about the being in the same division as the Seattle, which he kind of downplayed, but that probably factored in as well. So yeah, it didn't surprise me. I was definitely disappointed though, because the night before, because I think we just had recorded 2 days prior or day prior, and then the night before there was like a lot of news trickling out on Twitter about, there's a big announcement by Bobby Wagner tomorrow morning, and he had liked a Ray Lewis highlight tweet, and then he had like started following Lamar and all this kind of stuff. So people were like reading into the tea leaves a little bit, like, oh my gosh, he's following Lamar now. He's liking Ravens, highlights. Like he's definitely coming to us tomorrow. And turns out that wasn't the case. So I was very disappointed. But yeah, I mean, good for him, man. Yeah, and he's one of those guys negotiating his own contract, saving that whatever 5 to 10, I don't know, what is it, 5% that he doesn't have to give to an agent, and he gets to take his own. He gets to take his time. I see the benefit of it. It's kind of like the same concept of like going to court and not having a lawyer with you, in a sense. Maybe like most people don't do it because the lawyer knows more than you do, and you don't need obviously, and you don't need to worry as much. They take care of everything for you. But on the other hand, you have to pay them to do that. So I guess people that are more business savvy or want to learn the business more take it upon themselves to represent themselves and get the ins and outs of that as well. So I see the pros and cons of it, and that's what our boy Lamar's doing. He's saving that 5% for him and his mom and his family, and get if he wants to become a billionaire, that's good life lessons in the business world to have when you're negotiating your own contracts for the next 15 years.
With Bobby Wagner, it's interesting because people are saying, oh, well, he could have gotten more money if he had an agent and this and that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but if at the end of the day, the player is cool with it, isn't that the goal anyway? Like, I feel like the job of an agent is, okay, my guy wants this, the team is offering that, and I have to somehow get what my guy wants, right?
Sure.
If you're the guy and you're just willing to cut out the middleman, I mean, we always, whenever businesses do it and they cut out the middleman, we always sort of praise them, right? Because they're taking it upon themselves to, be more involved in their business or whatever the case may be. I don't think every NFL player should negotiate their contract, though. So risky, especially when you're younger. I think worry about the football stuff and let the agent take care of the business side of it. But I definitely respect, and there has been a precedent for this, right? Like Richard Sherman negotiated his contract with the 49ers. And then there was another guy too, DeAndre Hopkins. He negotiated his contract when he went from the Texans to the Cardinals. So some of these big name players are sort of taking it upon themselves to negotiate their own deals. And they're smart guys, right? And a lot of these guys have been in the business for quite some time. So they've probably gone through a rookie contract. They've probably gone through another one, saw the stack of paper, looked through it, been like, oh, shit, I don't want to read all this stuff. Went through and then found issues with their deal later on, right? I'm speculating with this, but
you got to imagine that they're educating themselves on the process in the off season when they have time. It's just a lot. I mean, I get why most people don't do it because you got a family and you got football that you're training for all year rounds, and who has the time? I mean, obviously you can make the time if you want to educate yourself, but yeah, it's just a to each his own type of situation. You gotta imagine these guys are educating themselves in the off season, preparing for afterlife, after football life. If they want to get into business, I guess like I said earlier, it makes sense for them to have this experience and educate themselves on the process and stuff. So I think that's possibly the variable with some of these guys.
Or here's another one too. They got burned by a bad agent. There are good agents out there and there are bad agents out there, right? Yeah. So like, who's to say that some of these guys didn't get burned in their previous contract and they thought, nah, I'm not going through that again. I'm going to, because it seems like it's the older guys.
Yeah. And you can I guess, and you kind of have a starting point of where the negotiation can start if you are representing yourself and you're not as, obviously, if you're not as educated as a professional agent, but you can just be like, hey, the guy, I'm better than everybody at this position, and the guy that is making the most is making this amount. So I want more than that. So that's a good, in some of these guys' cases, like Bobby Wagner, I mean, he's not the best at his position, but he's up there. And Lamar, obviously, he has a great starting point now. Be like, well, you see what Deshaun Watson got? I want that and more. So that's always a help when you have, things to compare it to.
Yeah, I know. It had Steve Bisciotti nervous. He's like, oh, man, I wish he had that. It hadn't been all guaranteed.
Maybe the Browns got strategic in that, We got the two teams in our division that are leading the way have, young quarterbacks that are going to have to pay soon. So let's set the precedent. So, the Browns, it's hard to believe, but for how much they're paying Deshaun Watson right now, but 2 years from now, they're probably going to have the cheapest quarterback in the division,
Isn't that crazy how that goes? How it just continues to escalate? It's like the Cold War when Russia and U.S. were building up all their nukes. It's just like, that's what it feels like in the NFL. And if the salary cap just keeps going up, what's to stop it? The reason I brought up the Bobby Wagner stuff is because it kind of set off a chain of events for things that happen later on in the week, right? So we miss out on Bobby Wagner. That's a history we'll never see. But Josh Bynes re-signs to a 1-year deal to sort of cover for that. And then on yesterday, Calais Campbell re-upped his contract. So he signed for 2 years, $12.5 million, a bargain, I think. Josh Bynes is interesting. We'll start with him. So former Raven, he's played with the Cardinals. He's played with the Panthers, I believe, before we picked him up the second time. Every time he comes back to the Ravens perform better. Causation is not correlation. But at the same time, like, it's interesting to see how, and even when he came back in 2019, we were 2-2. Yeah. And our defense was having issues, and he came back in the lineup, and all of a sudden we win 12 games in a row. I'm not saying that, believe me, Josh Bynes is not the main reason why that happened. But it is interesting that every time he seems to come back, he made the last tackle in the Super Bowl. He was with us during that time period, so he's been a Super Bowl champion with us. 1-year deal for Josh Bynes. He's 32. He'll be 33 next year. What do you make of it? I think it was a necessary move after Bobby Wagner sort of went somewhere else. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I was happy about it. Yeah, especially since we missed out on Bobby Wagner. Yeah, like you said, he was one of the pieces that, DaCosta brought in to revamp our defense when we were having early season troubles in Lamar's MVP season. I remember I was at the game, the Cleveland game. I think it was week 4 or week 5 early in the season, and we got our asses whooped. I mean, the game was pretty close for the first 2.5 quarters, but then the third and fourth quarter, Cleveland just manhandled our defense. And that was like the first year with Earl Thomas. And then I remember Earl Thomas and Brandon Williams got in a fight because Brandon Williams left the game early or something. And, Earl Thomas called him out for it or something. We did a lot of we cut a couple guys, and then we, added Josh Bynes. We added LJ Fort. I feel like there was somebody else that we added too, but Yeah, and then from that point on, and then a couple games later, we traded for Marcus Peters, and so that was that season. And yeah, Josh Bynes was a huge piece in turning around that defense. And he made a lot of plays. And then I was a little upset that he didn't get re-signed. And then he went to Cincinnati the year after, and then we brought him back again last year, and he played well for us too. The old man was always calling out. Remember, I think it was the San Diego game. Oh, sorry, San Diego game, the Charger game, LA now.
Yeah.
But he was like calling out the plays, getting tackles in the backfield. Like he was all over the place, and yeah, he knows the defense really well, and he's a leader. So I was pretty. I mean, I would rather have Bobby Wagner, but I was happy to see that we brought him in for one more year because he definitely is going to help in that linebacker room. He's a leader. He's kind of like the coach on the field type vibe in a sense. So he makes big plays. He can get people in position, and he won the Super Bowl with us. It's nice to we're probably going to lose. We're probably not going to have McPhee back, and we might not have Jimmy Smith back. So adding, obviously we'll have Justin Tucker, and Sam Cook, but having Bynes there, having some of those familiar faces from the Super Bowl time, kind of talk to the young guys, be like, hey man, I won a Super Bowl here. Having one more guy like that staying on the team is probably beneficial in that way too.
And another year of a guy who understands the culture too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's sort of what you alluded to, like you can lead the younger guys along. It's not like he's over the hill per se. I mean, with Calais Campbell, as much as he was contemplating retirement actually after the end of the season. I also like the Josh Bynes signing. I think it's a good 1-year deal. I think it's good to have continuity on a defensive line that we assume is going to look much different once the draft is over. So awesome signing there. The Calais Campbell one, 2-year deal. Mm-hmm. A guy who was contemplating retirement this year signs on for an extra year. I really like this because of the message that it sends, right? So first off, it's cheap. 12.5 mil, that's 6.25 a year with incentives. And with Calais Campbell, he's at the point in his career, he's been to the playoffs 6 times. He doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. So you would think that a guy look at Bobby Wagner is a great example of this. A guy who's been in the league for 9 years, he goes to a contender, right? And we're seeing a lot more of that as the NFL landscape has sort of changed. And with this new mindset, it's good because I think he sees Baltimore as a contender. If you're late in your career and you don't have a ring yet, that should be your priority, is to go grab one for your legacy, right? I think Calais Campbell is going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless of whether he gets a ring or not. But for him personally, and I think for our organization, I think it says a lot. I think he thinks that, we have the pieces in place to win a Super Bowl here, and he sort of banked on that. I guess the other version of that is no other team wanted him, but I just have a hard time believing that you wouldn't want a Walter Payton Man of the Year winner in your locker room. You know what I mean? We talked about it several podcasts ago, a couple months ago, about the importance of those kind of guys. So you've been waiting on this. You've been waiting on Calais Campbell to get re-signed. Now that he is re-signed, do you like the deal? Do you like what we offered him? What do you think is the main takeaway for this one?
Yeah, I mean, 2-year, 12.5 mil, but he has like $4 million in incentives. I mean, everything I said about Josh Bynes times 5, and including height and size, because he's the leader in our locker room. He's the most tenured guy in our locker room. This will be his third or fourth year with us. Third year, I believe. Third year. So, he's established as a Ravens player at this point. And you got to imagine that he had some contact with other teams. There's no way the Ravens were the only team that wanted him. So the fact that he came back, that's that makes me think that he wanted to come back, which is good because he sees potential with us. And I mean, he's just a run stopping and pass rushing right on that defensive line. He's a force, man. He's a huge human being. And and then obviously our defense is known to have some leaders, some of the best leaders in the history of the game on our defense, and he's one of those type of guys that's like a vocal leader and leads by example type guy. So you always want those type of guys on your team, and he's one of those guys, being a Walter Payton guy, who not only does he do it on the field and in the locker room, he does it in the community as well. So he's a good dude, big dude, and he still has some juice left into him. I mean, he single-handedly helped us win that. I wouldn't say single-handedly, but he was a huge reason why we came back against the Indianapolis Colts in that crazy Monday night game. He had that blocked field goal. He had a sack or a couple sacks or something like that. And so yeah, I'm very happy to have him back. And I mean, we still got a lot more work to do on the defensive line, but that was a good signing, especially since we're probably going to lose Brandon Williams, and we don't know about Derek Wolfe, if he's going to be healthy or not. So good stuff there. And like you said, it's cheap.
I think he's banking on the fact that the defensive line is going to look much different this year than it did last year. And I think that was sort of a sticking point too.
I'm sure we're going to have a couple guys on that with our 10 draft picks that are going to be added to this defensive line,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's almost a certainty at this point. Okay, so great. Yeah, those are the two guys on the line. And then we also re-signed a guy that I really like. I know he's not a name that gets called out too much on the Ravens roster, but Geno Stone also got re-signed at safety. So we're deep now at safety. That's I think that signing is just to sort of maximize our depth at that position. And I like Geno Stone. I think he shows a lot of hustle. There was there was a preseason game last year where he had like 2 interceptions. Yeah. He almost had a fumble recovery return to it for a touchdown. I can't remember what game it was. It might have been the Browns game, but
yeah,
was it the Rams? Maybe
it was towards the end of the year where he had to be playing because of all our injuries and COVID issues. But yeah, he showed promise for sure. Yeah, I'm glad we got him back as a depth piece, and he's a special teamer. He was a 7th round pick, 2 or 3 years ago. So he still has some developing to do. But yeah, he's shown some promise in that against the Saints last year. He had almost 3 picks last year in that preseason game. Yeah. But that also I saw something on Twitter, kind of, closes the door on Deshaun Elliott returning, I think. There was something on Twitter. I couldn't find it the next day, but I saw someone where, just a fan tweeted like, "Hey, Deshaun, like we need to get Deshaun back," like tweeting towards the Ravens, and Deshaun Elliott responded and said, "Yo, that's gone, bro," or something like that. Like, that ain't happening. Like, that's dead or something like that. So it doesn't. If that tweet wasn't forged, it seems like there's no return for Deshaun Elliott, which is going to be like crazy. I mean, we've had a lot of turnover this year, and a lot of guys signing one-year deals. Tavon Young just signed a 1-year deal with the Bears.
Oh yeah, and that's another issue. We're losing corners left and right. Not only Tavon Young, he signed with the Bears, but then Chris Westry is now a Carolina Panther. Yeah. So he's gone now. He went with Bradley Bozeman. I mean, it's kind of crazy with Anthony Averett going to the Raiders. Now, corner has emerged as a pretty significant need. The one thing that I will say is we have Brandon Stevens right now playing at safety.
Yeah.
We could move him to corner.
I don't know, man. You think so?
He played it in college. I mean, I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying that that's something that is an inevitability. I think we're going to address corner in the draft. But, like, we're pretty thin at corner now, to the point where I'm actually looking at corners in the draft now, because I'm like, damn, that actually we just lost 3 guys, basically, to free agency in that position. So we could do that. I think Brandon Stevens will stay at safety. Brandon Stevens will stay at safety.
Yeah.
I was thinking Brandon Williams. I don't think
Yeah,
he's playing safety anytime
I
soon.
mean, yeah, he could be one of those hybrid, like sometimes playing linebacker, sometimes playing slot corner potentially.
Yeah.
Especially because we have the new guy from the Saints, Williams, our big free agent signing, and then Chuck Clark. So those are our two starters right now, and Brandon Stevens needs a place. I mean, he's going to be on the field because I think they think very highly of him in the defense. So yeah, you might be
Yeah.
right. I would. I mean,
That's if we don't. But again, we're gonna address corner, right? Like I'm not. That's something that if you need a guy at corner, you can always slide Brandon Stevens over. I mean, but other than that, outside of that, Jimmy Smith is still a free agent. I mean, corner has become a major concern for this team, basically, as free agency has gone by, which has usually been one of our strengths on our team. So that was interesting. I read an article on ESPN, since we're talking about the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Bisciotti made a comment that said that all of our 10 picks could potentially go to defense, and he wouldn't complain about it, which I think is insane. I don't think that has, it's never happened with a team that's had 10 picks. It's happened with teams that have had 6 or 7 in previous years, and it's such an all-in strategy on one side of the ball that I think it's only happened like twice in NFL history. But there are a lot of positions that need addressing, right? And it's funny, if you go on NFL.com and you look at the mock drafts, I've seen like 4 different mock drafts that all have us addressing a different position in the first round. So whoever we're taking at the first round, whether it's a person at edge, offensive tackle, center, like sky's the limit. I have absolutely no idea who the Ravens are going to draft this year in the first round. I know the needs that we have. Are you concerned that all of these people who are commenting are having like differences of opinion on which position? Because it implies to me that we have a lot of needs. But I don't know. It's just wild to me that you go on to NFL.com and 4 different players who play 4 different positions are taken by the Ravens in the first round. I also saw something that we might trade up since we have all of these picks in the 3rd and 4th round. Like maybe we can use that to get a higher position. I don't know, man. It is the draft is going to be super interesting. I don't want to get too into it until next week. But we have to start talking about it because the way that people are making it seem, they make it seem like we have a lot of positions we need to address. So I don't know, man. What do you make of that? It's just sort of strange.
I'd be surprised if all 10 of our picks goes to defense. I wouldn't be surprised if majority of them do, but I think we definitely need some O-line help and potential a tight end. Because we have Mark Andrews, we lost Eric Tomlinson to Denver. We still have Oliver, so that's cool. Nick Boyle is still our best blocker basically, but he struggled last year coming off that injury. So I think we might in the later rounds go after a tight end if 7 or 8 of our picks goes towards the defense, because like you said, we have only 6 cornerbacks on our roster right now. 3 of them are coming off season-ending injuries in Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, and Eamon Marshall. And then the other 3, Robert Jackson, Kevin Seymour, Kevin Tolliver, we've never even heard of before. I think Robert Jackson and Seymour had to play a little bit towards the end to cover us, and then I think we all know that Cincinnati game where Joe Burrow threw like 6 touchdowns on us and stuff. So those are the type of guys that were in the lineup then. So I mentioned this in the season-ending podcast we did, talking about my worries about the cornerbacks, and then our 2 main guys coming off season-ending injury. We're in trouble in cornerbacks. So I wouldn't be surprised even if we take that first-round pick cornerback. I wasn't thinking about that up until recently, until we lost Chris Wesley and we lost Tavon Young and Averett. So And there's a guy that's been potentially mocked to us, but he just had a really good pro day. The guy from LSU, I forget his name.
Derek Stingley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
people were potentially thinking he could make it to the middle rounds, and the Ravens would have opportunity to get him there. But he had an excellent, because he's coming off a Liz Frank injury, and he didn't do the combine because of it, so it was very up in the air about his health, but he was clear to do his pro day, and he knocked the pro day out of the park apparently. So he's probably back in the top 10 potentially, so we might not have a chance of getting him. But if he's there at 14, I wouldn't be surprised. And there's a couple other good cornerbacks. I mean, we can dive into that in later pods, but so it's not like he would be the only option at 14, but and it would be a interesting matchup when we play Cincinnati, since him and Jamar Chase, battled each other at practice every day. And there's some really good highlights of them, battling at practice. And so seeing that 2 times a year, potentially 3 times a year if we see them in the playoffs, them two going at it would be pretty cool. Old college teammates. And then obviously he has experience defending Joe Burrow too. So,
man, you convinced me. I think that's our guy. Because Lamar was putting out stuff about Sauce Gardner, the corner that's coming out of Cincinnati. 2 things about that. One, I think he's going to get taken a lot earlier. I think he's going to be probably a top 10 pick in this draft. And 2, I wasn't blown away by his tape. I think the thing that the research I did on him was sort of like, I love the way he blitzes. He's amazing. He's super fast, but like his coverage is all right. I don't know. Sauce Gardner's tape did not blow me away the way that I thought it would, considering people were talking about this guy as a top 10 pick. Yeah, the Derek Stingley makes a lot of sense, though. I like that. The Jamar Chase, him lining up with him, knowing his tendencies, knowing Joe Burrow's tendencies when he played him every year in practice. I mean, it obviously switches when you go to the NFL. I mean, I don't know how different Zach Taylor's scheme is as opposed to who was down there. Who's the head coach for LSU? Ed Orgeron, right? Was the head coach down there? He's gone now, but it's interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great pick. Also, I was looking at Jermaine Johnson. He's an edge rusher out of Florida State. I saw his tape and I was like, oh my God, this dude's a monster. If he ends up falling to 14, what do you think of them? What do you think of the Ravens trading up? Do you think that's likely with the 14th pick?
We might stay where we are because there's not a lot of talk about quarterbacks going early, which would push other talented players back towards us. So that's unfortunate that, we have this high of a pick, but there's potentially no quarterbacks going to go ahead of us. So, but I mean, there are a lot of defensive guys available, that like a lot of big name guys, a lot of edge rushers, a lot of cornerbacks, one really good safety, but we're not in the safety market, obviously. So I wouldn't be surprised if we, if we stay put at that 14th and get a corner. I was going to say edge was like definitely are going to be our pick, but I think cornerback is in our options now. And there's, a lot of good guys that there's going to be a guy that falls to us at 14 and we're going to get value, whether it's Jermaine Johnson or when it comes to edge, Jermaine Johnson, or the guy from Oregon State. Oregon, what's his name?
Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, but Kayvon Thibodeau. Yeah, he had a recent. He was on a panel with Ray Lewis recently. I don't know if you saw that, but he was like, praising Ray Lewis, how Ray Lewis was like his hero, and he wants to be just like Ray Lewis, and he wants to play for the Ravens. And Ray Lewis was like, "Damn, I'm about to cry." It was pretty.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
I like Kayvon Thibodeau too. Yeah. The good thing about this draft, because it's not quarterback heavy, I feel like a lot of teams in these first few rounds are going to get guys who are, you're supposed to be an impact immediately, but I see a lot of starter quality guys in the first round of this draft. And the good thing is with the Ravens, like even if you miss out on a pass rusher you don't like, you could pick up a corner that's awesome, right? Another corner they were talking about was Trent McDuffie at Washington, not Washington State. The University of Washington.
Yeah.
I should have known that. I was stationed up there. Shame on me. Yeah, they liked him a lot too. So I feel like the Ravens are in a great position at 14 because someone is going to, a really quality player is going to fall to them at 14. Not because the player is being overlooked or because they have some question marks, but just because of the different amount of talent that's available in this draft. Like and it's not quarterback heavy, right? Like you were saying. So I think 14 is a good spot. I don't know if you trade up. I kind of like that we have 10 picks in this draft. I like that we can do
we need
a
all
reload. Yeah, 100%.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if one gets, we trade one to go up maybe in the third round. I doubt we trade one to go up in the first round, but I wouldn't be surprised if we trade back to pick up more picks, and then we use some of that leverage to trade up maybe in the second or third round, and then maybe we get extra picks for next year. So Eric DeCosta is always, collecting picks left and right. That's the reason why we have fucking 10 picks, the most picks this draft. So we may not need all 10 of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if we keep. I wouldn't be surprised if we have 9 guys and we trade one to get a pick next year or something like that. Kind of like what the Eagles did this year with the Saints earlier. That was another big news when it drafted this. The Saints traded with the Eagles. The Eagles had 3 picks in the first round this year. The Saints like a guy, obviously, and they wanted to leapfrog the Chargers, and they kind of like swapped picks with the Eagles, and then gave the Eagles, traded their first round pick this year for next year. So they'll have 2 picks next year. And next year's draft is going to be more QB heavy. So they're going to give, sounds like they're going to give Hurts another season to prove himself. And if not, they'll have more ammo next year to get a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if Eric does something like that. But yeah, I really hope some of these teams reach on these QBs, because I've heard from a few guys, I think it was DJ and Bucky Brooks on their podcast, that none of these guys in this draft would have been picked ahead of the 5 guys that were picked in the first round last year.
The draft every year is sort of a crapshoot, right? Because you really don't know. You don't. I mean, a guy could get injured and then you've wasted a pick, right? But I don't know. Malik Harris at his pro day, he had a very good pro day. I don't know. I think I know what people are saying, and I know there's reasons for why people are not too high on the quarterback class. I mean, when I look at some of their tape, there's stuff that I see. All the quarterbacks are flawed, really. But that might be like a pick where a team picks a quarterback. Like, imagine if the Steelers picked, let's say, Desmond Ridder, who I'm really high on, but not a whole lot of other people are. Let's say they pick Desmond Ridder and he ends up being awesome, and they get him with like the 32nd pick or something, like whatever the pick the Steelers have. They get him late in the first round.
They have 20th. Yeah.
I mean, even if it's a backup quarterback, like if he's ready to start in a couple years, maybe that looks like a better pick down the road. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think the quarterbacks are as bad as people are making them out to be. I really don't. I think there's Malik Harris. Like I said, he had an awesome pro day. I saw him throw a ball on a rope, on a dime to a dude in the end zone. And all these talent scouts that were there watching him were like, right, right in their notepads. And it's like, all right, well, maybe you steal a guy, right? I don't know. But next year's class is going to be better. Good for the Eagles, because if they aren't sold on Jalen Hurts, though, I don't know. It depends on how he does this year. Jalen Hurts, they seem to be really high on him.
They are at least going to give him one more year, moving that first round pick to next year when they're going to give him one more year, it sounds like. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to, the draft prospect analysis is not perfect. There's always guys that get, fall through the cracks, that get overlooked, that turn out to be Pro Bowler, All Pros, even multi-Super Bowl winners like, Tom Brady. I don't know if anybody's heard of him. But so it's not a perfect. So yeah, some of these guys could be the future, Pro Bowlers or something. You never know. But yeah, even if they do get picked in the first round, there's a chance that they won't start right away. And even Patrick Mahomes sat 1 year. So
Yeah, it did him a world of good too. Like
Definitely.
I think it did. I think sitting behind Alex Smith, who I think is a good, I thought he was a good quarterback. I really did. When the Commanders traded for him, I was like, yes, good pick for them because he never turned the ball over. But that's neither here nor there. The guy I did all this research on this guy that I thought we were going to take in the first round because I saw him mocked, but he wasn't a defensive guy. He was a center.
Okay.
Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa. Apparently, like the article that I was reading, they described him as like a once in a decade center. And I was like, damn, like I know that the Ravens they're like, oh yeah, Makari can play center. It's no big deal, and we'll just make do. But I like a lot of stability on the offensive line. But now, not even like we were talking about with draft analysis, not even 3 or 4 days later, they're like, nope, center's probably going to get taken in the 4th round or the 5th round. And we are like buying in on defense, which I'm okay with. I have no problem with that. It makes researching for the draft damn near impossible because I think I have a guy that I really like. And then something will come out from the Ravens that they're thinking about doing it later. And I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah, they might be throwing people off. You never know. They might be
yeah, you
leaking
never
shit
know.
to throw you off. There's all kind of mind games going on this time of year because no team wants other teams knowing who they're looking at. So yeah, I mean, I think center is a big need for us too. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if we pick. I mean, obviously that's 3 positions, so it's not that big of a, guess or like I'm not like jumping off I'm not on the edge of the limb here, like suggesting anything crazy. But I wouldn't be surprised with a center or some kind of like center hybrid interior lineman, um, cornerback or edge rusher. If it's outside of those 3, I would be very surprised.
I just had a thought too, because we have all these needs. It would be kind of hard, like watching the draft, like the first round of the draft. Like, what position would you be upset? Like it, because regardless of who they get, like if they got a pass rusher, I wouldn't be upset. If they got an edge guy, I wouldn't be upset. If they got a corner, I wouldn't be upset. Like there are a lot of different positions here where I'm just like, I don't know if there's a guy that they could take off in the first round, and I would look at that and be like, huh, why did we pick him? You know what I mean? I guess unless it's running back or quarterback, even a tight end. I agree. I think we need another guy there at that position. Like, so draft day is probably going to be great for us because regardless of like, as long as it's a position that's addressed on the defense or the offensive line, if somebody goes, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, good pick. Regardless, it's not like a total whiff or anything like that. That's enough draft talk. We're going to get a lot more when we go further on. And as the draft approaches, it's rapidly approaching. I think we're 18 days away from this point. So we'll have more stuff for that. Absolutely. Another deal that I wanted to talk about, there's been rumors that Melvin Gordon, we have gone and interviewed for him, and we're going to be making an offer for him. I dug into Melvin Gordon a little bit because he was a guy, he always, like, whenever his contract seems to be up, he always makes a big stink about it. And he's always a guy that seems to be on ESPN's radar when it comes to that. He played for Denver last year. And let's see if I can pull up his stats real quick. Okay, I got his career stats here. Played for Denver last year, 203 touches, 918 yards rushing, like that. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Let's see. What are some other things I know? He can catch. So he had 28 receptions for 213 yards last year. It concerns me that we're talking to him because it really puts a damper on J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Like, is their rehab not going as well as we hoped it would go? And that's why we're talking to Melvin Gordon. Are we just trying to get a third back in there, and then maybe we can make some moves with some of the guys lower down on the roster? I don't know. But when the news came out, I wasn't upset. I actually was like, if the rehab for those guys isn't going so great, Melvin Gordon, it's not like last year was weird, our running back room, because it happened like almost right before the season started. We lost both of our guys. So we were scrambling to find dudes to fill that spot. If we're talking to Melvin Gordon now and we sign him now, that means that the organization feels really comfortable talking to him. And I think that actually would be a pretty interesting move because he's 28?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's 28. You could sign him to a couple more years after that if you like what you see, and if you don't, you can cut bait. I don't know what he's going to ask for, but like I said, it seems like the past few years he's always been a guy. Like when he was going from the Chargers to Denver, that was a huge deal, and because he wanted more money from the Chargers. But I don't know. What do you make of this? This is an interesting, and this is like substantiated. Like the organization is making a package to go get him. Nice. What do you think? I kind of like it. I like that he can catch out of the backfield and score touchdowns.
I mean, Melvin Gordon is a talented running back. I mean, he had a great first 4 or 5 years with the Chargers. I mean, he's a hell of a running back. He was drafted first round. He's a hell of a running back, and to have him as our third option would be great, especially if we're talking as our first and two or number 1 and 2 option was Freeman and Murray last year because of obviously what happened to J.K. and Gus, but Freeman panned out pretty well, and Murray had a couple good games. But to have, Melvin Gordon is a huge upgrade over those two guys, especially because he's probably like 3 years younger than both of those guys, 4 years younger. And he's a lot more productive. He was splitting. He put that amount of yards up and touchdowns last year when he was splitting carries with Javonte Williams. They basically were 50-50. And I know that because I had Javonte Williams on my fantasy team, and I was, pissed almost every other week because it was like 1 week Melvin Gordon was getting all the carries, and then the next week Javonte Williams was getting all the carries. They were truly a 50-50 backfield. And Denver, Javonte Williams is a hell of a talent, and it's not surprising that Denver's moving on from Melvin Gordon because you always want the younger, cheaper guy when it comes to running back because running back is one of those positions that it's not hard to find another running back. There's obviously a lot of guys that, are on a different stratosphere, but you see what happens when teams hold on to those guys and pay them huge contracts. Look at Carolina, Dallas. You're seeing the exodus at Dallas right now after paying. Yeah. They put that Elliott's the reason why they had to franchise tag Dak 2 years in a row because they couldn't offer him the contract that he wanted because Elliott's contract was so big. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going down a tangent. But Melvin Gordon is a starting caliber guy is basically what I'm trying to say. And to have him as our third option is huge if JK and Gus come back 100% healthy. And if they need a couple, weeks in the beginning of the year to come off the PUP list and get healthy, having Melvin Gordon as our number 1 guy for the first quarter of the season is not a bad thing. He had almost 1,000-yard, 8 touchdown season last year, splitting carries. So that's a huge upgrade from our options last year if he's on the team, and I hope it works out. And if the money is right, I can't imagine he has much left. His stats are great. He's still relatively young, but he did have that DUI issue last year, so there might be some negotiation there where the Ravens are like, well, we don't know if you're getting suspended. Like, I don't know if that's still an option of him getting suspended. I know that was an issue last year if he was ever going to get suspended for that or not. But I would like it to work out for sure. What do you think?
The pros are definitely there, right? So he's had 3 seasons where he's rushed for at least 900 yards, and 2 of them were the previous 2 years with Denver. So that's good. He's not on the decline, I don't think. Yeah. And you can look at, he went down with rush yards this previous season, but he also had 12 fewer touches. So I don't know. I don't know how much to put stock in that. He's consistently 8 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns a year kind of guy like that. He's got a fumble problem. I think he fumbles the ball a little too much, and that's been a big knock on him. But at the same time, I don't know if that translates over year to year. I'll say this. The past 3 seasons for his 2 seasons with Denver and then the season with the Chargers, in 2019 with the Chargers, 4 fumbles, 3 lost. 2020 with Denver, 4 fumbles. He lost all of them. And then this last season with Denver, 3. So maybe he has a fumble problem. I don't know. But if he's used as a third back or even a second back, maybe that kind of cuts down on that. And maybe that's not.
Especially with, a quarterback that we have that takes a lot of the carry. I mean, we do kind of make up for it for the amount of times we run. So Lamar's not really cutting into like the number one running back's rushing attempts that much. But yeah, like you said, if he's the third guy, hopefully he's the third guy, because that means Gus and JK are back healthy, then he'll definitely be the third guy. So yeah, he's not going to get as many attempts, and so that would limit his fumble issues, I would assume. Yeah.
Are you concerned with this news that they're talking to him? Are you concerned that it's going to take J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards longer to get on the field? It's so early. It's April, right?
Yeah, I mean, start. Well, I think Harbaugh did mention in the coaches meeting they had earlier this year, a couple weeks ago. He does suspect that they aren't going to be ready for the start of training camp. So this is a smart. I mean, we definitely need somebody, and because that there's still the possibility of them still needing a little bit more time. So I think it's a great move if we end up getting them. I hope it works out now that I think about it more.
Well, and they're getting him at the right time too. Like I said, and I'm not knocking the Ravens here. They were put in a position where they had to find guys and pull them off the street at the last second, right? With the way where the injuries occurred in the offseason. So I'm not knocking them, but I like that we're here in April and we're hearing about picking up a back if we don't know if the top two guys are ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's typical of how the Ravens sort of go about business. It's just last year was so wonky because it happened like pretty much within the 2 weeks of each other towards the beginning of the season. And we were like, oh shit, who the hell is still available, right? We got to fill the roster out somehow. So last year, we all can admit, was just this weird freak anomaly where we are not going 8-9 next year, especially with the improvements that we've made so far in free agency. I think that was a great time for the Bengals to get better and take advantage of a weak AFC North. I don't think the AFC North is going to be like that this year. I think it's going to be what it typically is, which is, and in fact, it was last year. It was a dogfight last year. It's not like anyone was really making a bid to win the division anyway. The Bengals were 10-7. So let's not say that everything was totally on their side, but this year is going to be much different. I love that they're addressing it in April. If you can get him signed in April and you can get him before the offseason ramps up with OTAs and all that other stuff, good. That's the way that you should go about doing it, and especially if you have questions at the running back position. And you're right, Lamar takes a lot of that sort of off the table, right? I didn't mention this on my write-up, but I was watching Good Morning Football last week. They had Emmanuel Sanders on, still playing in the league. So whatever comes out of his mouth, if it's in regards to players, I take a lot of stock in that, right? He went on Good Morning Football and told all of the hosts there, like, players are afraid of Lamar Jackson, like afraid of him. They are afraid of his ability. They are nervous when they have to go play him. Like, and he said, this is a player, like players and coaches all are super concerned about him and the ability and the talent that he has. So if you're Melvin Gordon, it's sort of like you're going to join a team with one of the most feared players in the NFL. And that's coming from a player. That's not coming from Joe Schmo on the internet or anybody else. Like, this is a dude who and is in the AFC and has been playing for a lot of different teams. And he went out of his way to say, like, yeah, Lamar is a problem. Like, he is a problem. Whether you think he has a down year or not, we are definitely afraid of what he can do with the football in his hand. I really liked that. I thought that was great. I was like, yes, good. At least players have that opinion.
Ex-Steeler talking us up, huh?
Right. But that's what gives him more credibility, right? Like, not only did he play with the Steelers, he's played with the Bills. He's played with some AFC teams, and he says straight up, like, yeah, this dude is a problem. And that might appeal to a Melvin Gordon type who likes to catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 28 receptions last year, which was actually a career low for him. But like you said, he was splitting time with Javonte Williams. So I don't know. I like it. I like that they're addressing it. I think if we did, I wonder what the number will be. I'd like to see the contract. And if it's too much money, then maybe I might have an issue with it. But I don't know. Melvin Gordon, past 2 seasons, he's almost rushed for 1,000 yards. So he's a 2-time Pro Bowler. Yeah, bring him into the locker room. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Anything else that we didn't talk about? Golly, dude, I feel like I covered everything, but with all the news this week, maybe something fell through the cracks. You heard anything?
Yeah, I think we covered it all, man.
Shakeups in Baltimore, and I guess maybe it'll continue into this week. We still have some guys that are on tenders that may need to be signed, but as of now, I think that's it. We covered all the news. It felt like a lightning round, but we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes. Good stuff, dude. Thank you so much to all of the subscribers out there and the people who listen. We really appreciate it. Thanks to all the people who checked out our TikTok video. I'm upgrading more stuff as I go, and I'm updating that. We got a lot of good response for some of the stuff that we posted on there last week. Thank you so much. Like I said, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. This was a great week for Ravens news. Like, we had a ton of things happen, and hopefully next week we hear some more about how our team is shaping up for the 2022 season. Chad, it was awesome seeing you. Anything you want to say to the people before we take off?
Thanks for tuning in, and go Ravens. Call.
Boys and girls, we will see you next week. You all have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you on the weekend.